Merhabalar. Bir hafta aradan sonra yeniden karşınızdayız. Her ne kadar yeniden desek de aslında ülkenin ifade özgürlüğü gündeminde yeni hiçbir şey yok. Kadınlar bu yılda 8 Mart'ta polis şiddetiyle karşılaştı. Adalet isteyen Emine Şen Yaşar'ın Urfa Adliyesi'ndeki nöbeti birinci yılını geride bıraktı. Artan sıvı yağ fiyatları ile ilgili paylaşımlar provokatif eylem oldu. Gezi davasında savcılık hukukla alay etmeyi sürdürdü. Akademik tezler Erdoğan'a hakaret ve terör suçlamasına konu edildi. Ve daha fazlası. İşte geçtiğimiz 7 günün yaşananlarından seçtiklerimiz.
March 8 events were held in different cities despite the preventions of the administration and law enforcement. The Elazığ and Istanbul governorates banned the protests. Despite the ban decree in Istanbul, thousands of women gathered in Taksim. Thousands of women and LGBTQI+s protested in Cihangir Park. 47 people were detained at different points in response to the law enforcement's blockade of all roads leading to Istiklal Street and intervening against those who wanted to take to the streets. Despite the attack of the police on those who wanted to march, protests were held in Izmir as well. Despite the interventions, the march was held at night in Antalya and 40 people, including 5 lawyers, were detained.
The General Directorate of Security initiated legal action against 45 accounts that shared oil prices on Twitter, on the grounds that they took provocative actions. Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu stated that they will identify those who try to disrupt the public order regarding the allegations, and there are no stocks left in the markets, in a program he attended, and said, "We will do what is necessary against those who provoke this nation to go to the stores with certain political manipulations through social media, saying, 'This will end, this will end.'"
In the Gezi trial, the prosecutor submitted his opinion on the merits to the file. In his opinion, the prosecutor demanded that the defendants Osman Kavala and Mücella Yapıcı be sentenced to aggravated life imprisonment for the crime of attempting to overthrow the government of the Republic of Turkey by using force and violence. Kavala, the only detained suspect in the case, has been behind bars for 1,592 days despite the European Court of Human Rights decree.
A lawsuit was filed against 10 Istanbul provincial and district executives of Republican People's Party, who were detained for distributing the leaflets prepared by the party headquarters on the charge of insulting the president and insulting a public official. The first hearing of the case will be held on September 16 at the Istanbul Second Criminal Court of First Instance.
Mesopotamian news agency reporter Mazlum Engin Deniz testified within the scope of the investigation launched by Yüksekova Chief Public Prosecutor's Office. Engin Deniz is accused of making propaganda for a terrorist organization because he shared the agency's news about Abdullah Öcalan on his social media account.
A lawsuit was filed against the Manisa Provincial and Turgutlu District executives of People's Democratic Party, who distributed the party's statement regarding the budget negotiations in the parliament last December, which drew attention to the poverty brought on by the economic crisis. The trial of the 9 People's Democratic Party members and journalist Ibrahim Coşkun, who were charged with violating Law Number 2911 within the scope of the lawsuit, will begin on April 20 at Turgutlu 4th Criminal Court of First Instance.
Milas Public Prosecutor's Office declared that environmental activist Deniz Gümüşel's thermal power plant protest at the Olive Festival was a riot and issued a verdict of non-prosecution. The sponsorship of thermal power plants in the Olive Harvest Festival, organized by Muğla Municipality and Milas District Governorate on November 14, was met with a reaction by the residents of Milas and environmental activist Deniz Gümüşel, who carried the banner "Either indestructible wood or coal," was detained during the protests.
The verdict of conviction for the then managing editor of Evrensel Daily, Çağla Sarı, and owner Arif Koşar, who were sentenced to 5 months in prison each under Article 301 of the Turkish Criminal Code due to the news titled "The Police Opened Fire Against People in Nusaybin, 3 Injuries." published in the newspaper on March 15, 2016, returned from the Court of Cassation. The Supreme Court overturned the decision on the conviction instead of acquitting the defendants, stating that the elements of the crime in question were not found. The first hearing of the journalists who will be tried again with the scope of the file will be held on June 28.
The Inter-University Board examined the PhD thesis of academic Dr. Mehmet Baki Deniz, which he prepared for equivalency, requested that the academic be tried for the crimes of insulting the president and terrorism. The board is the only authorized institution in Turkey, and it turned out that it received 4 separate reports from 3 universities regarding the thesis, initially approving and then rejecting it.
A memorandum was prepared about People's Democratic Party Batman Parliament member Feleknas Uca for her speech at an event she attended in Aydın on July 12, 2020. In her speech, she said, "We wanted to reach our mothers, sisters, and comrades in Aegean Marmara, all Kurdistan cities in Turkey." Uca's expression Kurdistan and the cities of Kurdistan became reasons for the charge of public incitement to hatred and enmity.
The Justice Watch, which started in front of the Urfa courthouse by Emine Şenyashar after her husband and 2 sons were murdered by the bodyguards and relatives of the Justice and Development Party parliament member İbrahim Halil Yıldız on June 14, 2018 in the Suruç district of Urfa, and by Ferit Şenyashar, her only son who survived the massacre, has left 1 year behind. On the occasion of the first anniversary of the Justice Watch, human rights advocates, including representatives of non-governmental organizations and political parties, visited the Şenyashar family, saying, "Hear Mother Emine's cry for justice now." Ferit Şenyashar also said, "Despite everything, we will not lose hope. We love and want life and justice enough to die for them."
During the 1-year-long Justice Watch vigil, the grieving mother and her son were detained several times, and 14 separate investigations were launched against the mother, who demanded justice. In addition, Emine Şenyashar, who was tried in the lawsuits filed for allegedly insulting Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu and Justice and Development Party Parliament member İbrahim Halil Yıldız, was sentenced to judicial fine of 265 days in a lawsuit that was concluded during this period.
Invited to Şanlıurfa as part of the event organized by the Şanlıurfa Bar Association, famous fashion designer Barbaros Şansal was exposed to homophobic hate speech on social media before the event. Some journalists, politicians and union leaders who live in Urfa, who are known with their close relations with the government, demanded that the event be cancelled, targeting Şansal. Upon the increase of homophobic and hateful discourses, Şansal announced that he was targeted and cancelled the program, stating that there was no safety of his life.
An investigation has been launched against 6 lawyers who handled a case of the murder of 7 members of Dedeoğulları family in Meram district of Konya after being repeatedly harassed on the grounds that they were Kurds, with the allegation of public incitement to hatred and hostility. Lawyers have objected to the evaluation of the incident as an ordinary murder from the very beginning, and whose demands were not met during the trial process, from the hotel recordings of the perpetrator in the missing CCTV footage. After their objection, an investigation was opened against the lawyers following the complaint of Ali Keleş, a defendant in the file.
Cizre District Governorate banned the staging of the Kurdish play Mem Uzin, which was planned to be staged by Şermola Performance on March 12th without an explanation.
With a decree issued by the Hatay First Criminal Judicature of Peace, access to Yeni Yaşam Daily and Pirha News Agency websites was banned. No explanation was given about the contents of the reasoning behind the decision.
The news that the Freedom of Expression Association announced that the news containing the allegations about the Deputy Minister of National Defense was censored was blocked by the Ankara First Criminal Court of Peace on the grounds of violation of personal rights. The association was announcing the decrees of the criminal judicatures of peace on the access bans, so the access ban decree and deleting the content was made for the 13th time regarding the contents of the website of the association.
Posters with the words "Istanbul Convention keeps people alive" enforced the law number 6284, which the Van Hakkari Medical Chamber had hanged in Van for the celebration of March 8, International Women's Day, were removed by the advertising company on the order of the governor, and Happy March 8 posters were hung in their place without the knowledge of the chamber.
According to the data of the 2021 Marmara Region Prisons Rights Violations Report prepared by the Human Rights Association, the number of ill treatment, assault and torture cases in prisons doubled compared to the previous year. While 4,805 rights violations were detected in 450 applications made to the association in 2012, 6,222 violations were detected in 326 applications from 39 different prisons in 2021. The number of ill treatment, battering and torture cases doubled compared to 2020 and reached 1,605. According to the data of the Human Rights Association, at least 28 prisoners lost their lives last year.
A new investigation has been launched by the Mardin Chief Public Prosecutor's Office on the grounds of his news and social media posts about Mesopotamia Agency reporter Ahmet Kanbal. The journalist is accused of public incitement to hatred and hostility due to the news about rape perpetrators, expert sergeants, some irregularities regarding the Trasi period, and the news about the Mardin governor's ban against theater plays in Kurdish. In the file, the journalist was also charged due to his posts about Ceylan Önkol, Uğur Kaymas, Hacı Lokman Birlik, and Syrian Ali al-Hamdani, who were killed by the law enforcement, and his criticism of the statement of Justice and Development Party Parliament Deputy Chairman with the words, "It's immoral to invest the Turkish lira given to him by the state in a foreign currency," regarding the increasing exchange rates.
Gelelim haftanın adliye mesaisine. Tutuklu gazeteci Sedef Kavaş 49 gün sonra mahkemeye çıktı. İstanbul ve Eskişehir'de onur yürüyüşlerine katılan aktivistlerin ve İstanbul Sözleşmesi'ni savunan kadınların yargılanmalarına başlandı. Bakana hakaretle suçlanan gazeteci Ahmet Kanbal ise ilk duruşmada beraat etti. İşte haftanın ifade özgürlüğü davalarından bizim seçtiklerimiz.
16 citizens who were prosecuted on charges of making propaganda for a terrorist organization for commemorating the 34 people who were murdered in Roboski on December 28, 2011, were acquitted in the lawsuit filed against them at Şırnak Second Assize Court.
The first hearing of the case, in which 16 people, including 2 children, were detained in the police attack during the Pride Parade held in Eskişehir for the first time in 2021 on charges of violating the law on meetings and demonstrations, was held at the Eskişehir 8th Criminal Court of First Instance. The court's expert examination ruled that the photographs of the defendants be taken and scheduled the next hearing for April 26th.
The first hearing of the lawsuit filed against 7 people who were detained in the 2021 Istanbul Pride Parade after it was banned by the Beyoğlu District Governorate was held at the Istanbul 18th Criminal Court of First Instance on the charge of violating the law of meetings and demonstrations. The second hearing of the case was scheduled for September 21.
The trial of Rosa Women's Association President Adalet Kaya, who was accused of the activities of the association, the statements she participated in, and her social media posts, continued at the Diyarbakır 11th Assize Court. The next hearing of the case was scheduled for June 22nd.
The trial of 38 people, including journalists Taylan Öztaş and Tunahan Turhan, continued at the Istanbul 23rd Criminal Court of First Instance on the charge of violating the law on meetings and demonstrations for protesting the trustees appointed to the municipalities. The next hearing was scheduled for June 9.
The trial of the president of the Ankara Bar Association and the members of the board of directors continued on the charge of insulting a public official due to his statement on religious beliefs, thoughts and opinions after their reaction against Ali Erbash, the president of Religious Affairs, who targeted LGBTQ+ with hate speech. The next hearing of the case will be held on June 22nd at the Ankara 16th Assize Court.
The latest hearing of the lawsuit filed against 7 women who were beaten and detained by the police after hanging a banner that said, "Enough is enough. Women want life assurance," on the building of the Istanbul Provincial Director of Family, Labor and Social Services in defense of the Istanbul Convention, was held at the 23rd Criminal Court of First Instance. The trial of women accused of violating the law number 2911 and resisting to prevent duty, preventing the activities of public institutions, and damaging public property will continue on June 9.
The lawsuit filed against 7 citizens who were detained during the press release to commemorate the Madımak massacre in 2012 on charges of violating the law on meetings and demonstrations and resisting the police continued at the Ankara 2nd Criminal Court of First Instance. The next hearing in the case was scheduled for September 27th.
The third hearing of the lawsuit filed against 15 women who resisted against the geothermal power plants to be built on agricultural lands in Kızılçeköy district of Aydın was held at the Aydın First Criminal Court of First Instance with the allegations of prevention of duty and resisting the law enforcement. The hearing was adjourned to June 9 to complete the deficiencies in the file.
Author and J&J Publishing House owner Azat Zal was sentenced to 6 years and 3 months in prison in the case he was tried at Diyarbakır 8th Assize Court on charges of terrorist organization membership as part of the investigation against the Democratic Society Congress.
Journalist Ahmet Kambal was acquitted in the first hearing of the lawsuit filed against him at Mardin First Criminal Court of First Instance upon the complaint of Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu. The journalist was charged with insulting a public official due to his tweet after Soylu's resignation, "Rats leave the sinking ship first," is a universal saying. The ship sinks when the rats leave.
The trial of Homeland Party Chairman Muharrem İnce continued at the Uşak 3rd Criminal Court of First Instance on the charge of insulting the president because of the speech he gave at the Republican People's Party Uşak provincial presidency in 2016 during the time he was a Republican People's Party parliament member. The next hearing was scheduled for March 28th.
The final decree was issued in the lawsuit filed against People's Democratic Party Assembly member Beritan Yaşar at the Diyarbakır 8th Assize Court on the charge of terrorist organization membership based on a secret witness statement and the press statements she attended. The court sentenced Yaşar to 7 years and 6 months in prison.
Journalist Sultan Eylem Keleş, who was prosecuted on charges of insulting the president, was sentenced to 1 year and 5 months in prison without even being taken to court.
Arrested journalist Sedef Kabaş, who was charged with insulting the president and insulting a public official because of their duty due to a Circassian proverb she used in a television program she attended in January, stood trial. The journalist, who had been held in Bakırköy Women's Closed Prison since January 23, was sentenced to 2 years and 4 months in prison for insulting the president in the first hearing held at the Istanbul 36th Criminal Court of First Instance, whereas she was acquitted of the charge of insulting Minister of Interior Süleyman Soylu and the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure Adil Karaismailoğlu. The journalist, who was arrested for 49 days within the file, was released.
Bu haftalık da bizden bu kadar. Yetmedi diyenler için daha fazlası internet sitemizde. Haftaya yeniden görüşmek dileğiyle. Hoşça kalın.